Right, I figured I'd make a video on this in case you're looking at one of these to drive as a daily driver, and some of the things you might encounter that you're going to want to change. This is a original 1.6 LX diesel Rabbit pickup, and these were called caddies. Because they basically were a rabbit body with a truck bed so that you could carry stuff, which is kind of cool. But there's a lot of things to know about them as a daily driver, that, if you're going to do it, there's some things you need to really look into. Number one, a lot of the parts are obsolete for these. So you're going to be into used parts. It would be better if you had a second car, to drive from occasions when you're waiting for parts, because you might have to look for them, have to go to swap meets. You might have to go to there's a place called Hans Auto Parts. He has a lot of stuff. He's getting, they've been kind of tapering down over the years. I've noticed they don't have quite as much as they used to. A lot of the stuff is really garbage that's out there, and they have a lot of garbage, but they do have some stuff that works pretty well. Like they have like the door handles, they had those. Some of the window rubber, that stuff's available if you need that. The service parts, I think they used to have the injector pump lines. Those tend to crack quite a bit. I usually will carry one extra set behind my seat, because I've had times when I've been on the road, and if you don't have all the clamps on them, if you don't have all these clamps, like right here, there's a clamp, there's 3 of them, and there's a big one down here. If they're not all on there and the rubber isn't in them all, it's going to have issues with the things cracking. So you can have them anyway. So I have an extra set of lines usually underneath my seat every time I get on the road with this thing, because you're not just going to find those anywhere. That Hans Auto Parts used to make them. I don't know if they still do, but I bought a couple extra sets when I was driving this as a daily driver. A couple of things. This belt shouldn't be exposed like that, because if something gets in there, it can get stuck in there and cause the belt to break. I have a cover for it, but a lot of times the covers don't fit. If you have the 1.9 AAZ engine, the cover may not fit. I tried to get it on there and I couldn't get it to work, so I've just left it off. So it could be a random thing that might just get in there, like a animal, little mouse or something could get in there and totally cause havoc for you. So keep that in mind. I would highly recommend, if you're gonna drive one of these as a daily driver, I know it's like a big deal, but change it to the 1.9 liter, even if you don't put a turbo on it. If you're gonna put a turbo on it, definitely the 1.9. You get a lot more drivability out of it. It just drives so much better, and especially if you're gonna have air conditioning, which, you can sacrifice that if you want. Some guys do. They just don't have the air conditioning in it. But I like to have the air conditioning in mind, because, I just like comfort. That's the whole reason for having one of these. The other thing is, if you've got one that has working vent wings, you see how these ones are silicone shut? You're going to want to probably do that, because they leak. Literally, when you go to wash this thing, water will pour inside. If it rains, water will pour inside the car, and they're terribly made. They have these little things here against the glass, and they come unglued all the time. It used to be back in the day when these were newer, we used to see guys come into the shop every week. One of these things broke off and they'd want us to fix it, and we'd go, no, we can't, because we can't warranty it, because it would just fall off going down the road. Guys would pick them up, and usually the glass wouldn't break, and go to the side of the road and go pick up their vent wing and try and glue it back on with any kind of glue. It doesn't work. It doesn't last. So these things would break, come off the glass, And also, if you try to tighten it, shut it really tight and try and make it not leak, these ones would break off, or it would just leak. So you get one or the other or both. Another thing that likes to break on these is the clutch cable. So you always carry an extra one with you. And for some reason, they're just not very well made in the aftermarket. Well, they make a decent one, but they're the same. They don't last. Nothing does. So anyway, another thing that happens a lot on these is they get a broken hose. Constantly, there's always you can put all brand new hoses on everything, and for some reason, maybe the rubber on the old style they made on these or something, they just like to blow hoses. So plan on that happening a lot when you're driving it. It's pretty reliable. I mean, I used to drive this all over the state of California at one point, and it got me there and home, so it was good. One of the things I would upgrade on this is the fans. This fan is not the best for airflow. They do make a double fan for this, and it gives you a little more space to work on it, so I would recommend that. This fan still works, so I was just like, leave it alone. The aluminum radiators actually cool better than the old brass, or copper or whatever. Copper and brass, I don't know if they're both or whatever. They didn't dissipate the heat as well as the aluminum, so I upgraded to aluminum radiator. I noticed right away this thing started to run a lot cooler, so keep that in mind. These reservoir tanks are still available. This one's the Meyle ones are Meyle, Meyle. Okay, I think that's the German. They're not as good quality as the Dorman. This is a Dorman one. Just keep that in mind. If you order one, don't order the Meyle. The Meyle ones are real thin. I used to see those things break all the time. We used to get German ones back in the day, and they were cool. There's a lot of problems on these with wiring. Okay, if you're looking at a daily driver, you're gonna have wiring stuff is gonna nickel and dime you. You're gonna be constantly fixing and replacing wire, and the reason why is because back in the day when these were new, the windshields would leak. And now this is a German replacement rubber that doesn't have the chrome. I don't know, maybe the other ones were made in Brazil or something, but the rubber used to shrink. This rubber is over 10 years old and it hasn't shrunk at all. But a lot of them, the rubber would shrink and then water would leak inside. And so you'll see a lot of them with rust in the corners here on the windows, and even without the rust, they would still leak down the firewall and onto the wiring. And when they do that, that goes on the fuse block. Your fuse block starts to get bad connections actually inside the fuse block. So if you have an 81, 82, those fuse blocks are available. You can just replace the fuse block. The other thing that goes out on them is the grounding clusters. So there's like little round things. There's a couple of them up here, but there's ones under the dash, and I can't recall exactly where they are. There's two of them. There's a grounding cluster on each side, and I think that's right there. You can see it underneath here. And it's a little round thing with slip-on connectors on it that has your ground. So one of the things we used to do on these, back again when they were new, we used to take those grounding clusters and we would double ground them. So they'll get a bad connection between the grounding cluster and the body. And so if you double ground it, it helps to kind of keep the grounds working better. So that's another thing you're going to want to upgrade. So you're going to want to double ground your grounding clusters. If you take the dash out, you can see them pretty easily. I mean, without taking the dash out, it's really hard to get your head up under there. You can take this panel off. There's only 4 bolts that hold that in. It's pretty easy to take out. And with that out, you can see it pretty well too, but you got to get your head way up underneath there. So yeah, I mean, another thing is if you're tall, The seats here are not really that, they don't go back far enough. And for me, the reason I stopped driving this is because it's just uncomfortable for me. My knees are constantly bent. I can't straighten my legs out. So if you're shorter than, say, 6 feet, if you're shorter than that, you can probably drive one of these no problem. And it might be comfortable for you. But any taller than that, it's really kind of hard to get in and out of it. It's just because when you're driving it, it's all right, but in a long trip or something like that, you can't stretch your legs out at all. So it's kind of a bummer when that comes to it. So other than that, you know, there's not too many problems with them. You'll find most of them are missing the air conditioning. And if you're missing the air conditioning and you have a vent wing that doesn't work, it's really not very comfortable inside one of these things. If you had the original, if the vent wings were there and they worked properly, which they never will, I don't care how you think you can do it, you're never going to get them to work right, okay? The vent wings, you know, facing at you, driving down the road, like in a Beetle or something like that, it's not too bad. But in this thing, you're going to want the AC to work. And most of them, they disconnected them. The reason they disconnected most of the AC systems on these is because the on a 1600, on a gas engine one, or the 1600 diesel, as soon as you turn the air conditioning on, the engine almost stalls. I mean, it's only like 40 or 50 horsepower. I think it's 40 horse. And when you turn on the air conditioning, it takes about 8 of those horsepower away, and you just have no power. So your maximum speed on the freeway with the air on, with the stock engine, that's why I say go with the 1.9, just change it out. Then you'll make it a nice daily driver, okay? This thing drives great. But if you look at I want one because it's all original. No, you don't. All original is not the right way to be on one of these, because they were just terrible, okay? You turn on the air conditioning, and the maximum speed, I'm talking about maximum speed on flat ground, is about 55 miles an hour. So it's just undesirable. It goes super slow. It won't go uphill. You got to turn the air off to go uphill. You know, it's just, there's just no power with the 1600. Even if it's turbo, it adds a little bit, but it's not enough. You still need that 1.9. 1.9 doesn't care. You can have the air on, and they're made in Germany. They came in a German, I think Jetta had the 1.9 between 94 and 97, somewhere in there, 92 and 97. So the 1.9 AAZ is the way to go in one of these. You know, get the 1.6 out of there. I know it's a bit of money, but if you're going to drive it as a daily driver, you're going to appreciate what I'm telling you in this video. Most of the brake parts are available. The struts, if they're original, they need to be replaced. The original old oil struts they had, they just didn't work right. So you have to put, I got Bilsteins on this. I put Bilstein cartridges in it, and it just drives a whole lot better. It's a little stiff, but you know. The other thing you'll see a lot of guys do is they lower this truck, okay? Really, as a daily driver, not a good idea. I want you to look at what the lowest portion of this thing is. All right, what do you see right there? What you're looking at is the oil pan. So if you lower this thing 3 inches, and you're going, hey man, it looks cool, it's slammed and everything, whatever. What's gonna happen is you're gonna go over a bump, or something, or a rock, or a piece of wood, or something like that, and it's going to hit your oil pan, and yeah, it's going to knock a hole in it, and guess what's going to happen? All that money you spent on the engine, gone. All right, so lowering one of these things is not a good idea. These are 185, I think. I had a couple different tire sizes before I found these. These are 15-inch wheels. They're 185/60 15s. They fit really nice on them, but you'll notice that your speedometer, no matter what gear you put in it, it won't read correctly. So you're going to have that issue as well. So you're going to want to get a little GPS. Use your GPS on your phone and calculate what your mileage is, and you're gonna have to kind of figure that out. There's no and that makes it look the best. I had the 195 6Ds on here, and they would scrape and hit all the time. These ones don't. Okay, or unless you have the 13s. The 13s are not so great. But anyway, your speedometer is going to read off. So you're going to want to upgrade that. You know, you're going to have that to deal with. Another thing is the transmission options. All right. So your transmission, they had a 4-speed in some of them. The 4-speed had a really tall fourth gear. Okay, I think it's a 77 or something like that fourth, and it's too tall for the 1600 diesel. So that's another issue you're going to run into. The 4-speed, the fourth gear is fine if you upgrade to the 1.9 liter. It'll work okay, but really a 5-speed is a huge upgrade for this. And the 5-speed needs to be a 4, I believe it's called a 4T model, because that has the really tall fourth gear that the 4-speed has, but it has a fifth gear that the 4-speed has, and it has a better fourth. So getting up to speed works a lot better. The 5-speed is the way to go, guys. So this one's already got that. A couple of upgrades that I've done. This one has they were done before I got it, actually. It has the pull up for reverse. That's really handy. Really kind of hard to find that thing. AC works. 90% of these trucks you're going to find used or whatever, AC is going to be pulled out because of what I was telling you earlier in the video about the gas mileage, or I mean the speed, the power. So it's really hard to find one to work. Getting all the vents to work on your AC is a pain. You have to pull the dash off. Okay, it's not hard to do. There's 4 screws. You got 2 screws over here, and you got 2 screws over there. Take this portion of it out, your gauges, unplug the wires. It's really not too hard to do. You give this thing a good swift yank, and there's some clips up here that clip the dash in. And most of them are cracked like hell, because this one here, this has a replacement shell on it. You can buy these, okay, and they're not cheap. I don't know, not too bad, $150 or something like that. And then it just goes over your old one, so you can see it doesn't quite line up perfectly, but it works. It looks better than the old dash did. And then I painted this one. I put adhesion promoter on it and painted it so that you know, and it's got flat clear on here. You can't even tell. It looks like original, doesn't it? You can't even tell. It's got flat clear, and it's got it's painted with I used Victory Red, and I added some black to it to get it to look like that, so it looks kind of like the original color. But yeah, to get this vent working, there's a vacuum motor way up here on the top up here that you can't see. You can pull the glove box out, you can probably see it, but the vacuum hoses from there going over, you need to test all those, make sure they don't leak and all that. And the vacuum motor for that's not available anymore, but you could wire it open so that the vent comes out of the middle, because you're going to want it coming out of the middle, because it doesn't cool enough unless you have it coming out of all the vents in this thing. So anyway, but it's such a small cab that you don't need much. It'll cool pretty well even at 100 degrees or more. So anyway, I found on this one the gauge for the temperature. The fan does not turn on until it's past the middle. So it's kind of weird. Everything's kind of different on it. I mean, it's really fun to drive, and especially with the turbo, it's got a lot of power. I mean, with the 1.9 and turbo in this thing, it's quick. It's no little cruiser anymore. It gets up and moves. It's like a night and day between this 1.6 liter, which has absolutely no power. You can't pass anyone in that. You're in the right lane, going slow. And the thing is, you still get the 50 miles a gallon with the bigger engine and the turbo. I still get around 50 in this thing. So there's not many trucks you can get 50 miles a gallon in. I don't think there's any others. And people go, well, I want the original 1.5 or 1.6 because they got 50 miles a gallon. So you have a couple of different options on that too. Okay, so if you want to keep the 1.6, I'll lay it out how it is. All right, the early ones came with mechanical lifters. Okay, so you have to adjust the valves on it, and you'll do that once. You have to pull the cam, which is a real pain. That means you got a timing belt, and you got to have special tools to do it. Okay, you got to pull the cam up and pull the followers off and replace the shims. So you got to measure it and measure the shim with the micrometer, and then figure out how much thicker shim you need. You put it back in, you measure it, and you check it again. Oh shoot, I'm off, a little bit, and you have to take the shim back out, go down to the store, buy more shims, put them back in. Royal pain in the ass. Royal pain in the ass. I'm telling you, you'll do it once, and you'll be like, I'm just going to yank this motor out. So the advice in this video is from experience. Okay, I've done this a lot. I had these trucks when they were new. I worked on them back in the old days. I used to have to adjust those valves. I hated it. Absolutely hated it. In fact, I quit the job that I was doing because I just couldn't stand working on them anymore. So if you look here at the front of the head, it's got a big bulge in here. I believe that's the one that 1.6 that had mechanical injection. Just pull that sucker out and put a 1.9 in. Don't even waste your time with that thing. So the early ones that had the mechanical injection also had this issue. I don't know what years. There was a break in there. They could have changed. I don't think you can. I think if you have a mechanical head, you have to have a mechanical block. I'm pretty sure that they didn't interchange. And what would happen is the car would get hot once. It would overheat, and this happened quite often. And the corners of the block on the early 1600s and 1500s, 1.5, 1.6 liter, early one, 1980 and before, you don't know that the engine's been changed. It could have been an early one put in your later truck too. So remember this, okay? All four corners of the block have a weak casting, and you overheat it, and it won't even blow the head gasket sometimes. It'll just crack the block. Okay, it'll make a crack that goes vertically along where the bolts go in, the four bolts on the, it'll crack one of the four corners of the block. Now the engine's no good. So, like I said, you're better off just starting off fresh, getting the 1.9. The later model, the earlier ones had Allen bolts. So if you pull the valve cover off and you see Allen bolts, you got an early engine. That's pretty well known. And the later ones had triple squares. Okay, so we got triple squares, and I believe they were 10 millimeter and 12 millimeter or something. I can't remember. They were larger. Okay, so VW fixed it, but those old ones are still around. I think they recalled some of them, but some of them didn't get recalled. There's a lot of them still out there. So you might have an early engine, and with that, you're going to want to change it because it's going to leave you stranded somewhere, okay? And it's not going to be fun. So remember, all four corners of the block. What we did back in the early days to fix that is we put in studs, deep set studs on all of them, and that fixed it. But honestly, just replace the damn engine. I know it's expensive, but if you want it to be reliable, you want it to have good power, and you want to have fun with it, and you don't want to be driving 20 miles an hour going up a hill, replace the engine to the 1.9. It's like night and day. This is like a gas engine. It has the same power as the 1.7 gas. So, and you got the diesel gas mileage and no smog checks. So if you're in California. So anyway, that's a little bit about the Rabbit. I figured I'd just go on and make a little quick video on this and talk to you guys about, if you're going to drive one as a daily driver, yeah, there's some issues to work out, but it's fun. If you want one, this is, what you get. This is good for the Rabbit pickup and the regular Rabbit car. So if you want a Rabbit car, those are all things to look into. Mechanical injection, that one, or mechanical lifters. They had hydraulic lifters in later years, mechanical ones in the early ones. Definitely, if you're going to keep the 1.6 and it's got a mechanical, just chuck that thing. Believe me, you don't want it. All right, so hope that helps. Talk to you guys in the next video. Please like, share, and subscribe.